The President, please be seated. The court is now back in session. Before I hand over to Mr. Duch Pari to continue reading relevant paragraphs of the closing order, the Chamber wishes to respond to the question raised by the civil party lead co-lawyers who asserted that the Chamber failed to read two paragraphs and the probative consequence for paragraph 161 rather, was read out by Ms. Sayakolwati. And as for the other paragraph, 282, we would only read the paragraphs that are relevant to the alleged facts against the charged persons. And the Chamber ordered the greffier not to read any paragraph that are not considered to contain the facts concerning the accused in question. And in addition, that is also in accordance with document E124/7.2, and that was the decision. And in addition, the Chamber decides that other paragraph not be read. For example, the the paragraph concerning legal facts as well as the forms of responsibilities, because they are not directly relevant to the fact alleged against the accused. Lead co-lawyer for the civil party. Mr. President, I would like to correct myself. Just now I mentioned paragraph 161, but actually I meant paragraph 261. That was the position from the civil party lead co-lawyers. Thank you, Mr. President. The President. Now I hand over to Mr. Duch Pari to continue reading relevant paragraphs of the closing orders from paragraph 873 to 879, paragraph 893 to 901, paragraph 1016 to 1024, paragraph 1146, paragraph 1151 to 1162, paragraph 1580 to 1584, paragraph 1589 to paragraph 1597, and paragraph 1601 to 1604. You may proceed. Duch Pari. Role in the CPK security apparatus. Member of the Military Committee of the Central Committee. Paragraph 873. Nguyen Chie was a member of the Military Committee of the Central Committee. His membership of the committee is confirmed by Ieng Sari, redacted, and speech he gave on the occasion of the 9th anniversary of the RAK in the name of the Military Committee of the CPK. Deutsch explains that Nuon Chea was part of this committee, although it is unclear whether he had knowledge of this at the time, or if his understanding has evolved with his access to the case file. In any case, Deutsch was aware at the time that Nuon Chea was responsible for security and military affairs. Nuon Chea has recognized that the committee existed during the CPK regime and that its role was national defense and purging internal enemies. But he has firmly denied that he was a member of it. Paragraph 874. Other evidence in the case file supports the fact that Nuon Chea was responsible for security affairs. With respect to security, Deutsch states that Pol Pot, quote, Pol Pot decided on security work, but Nuon Chea was his representative, end quote. A telegram operator in Autonomous Sector 105 explains, quote, my typewritten documents regarding security matters were sent to Nuon Chea, end quote. He adds, quote, Nuon Chea regularly instructed on security matters, end quote. Other witnesses corroborate the responsibility held by Nuon Chea in this area. In an interview with a journalist, Nuon Chea stated that Son Sen was responsible for the Ministry of Defense, and he further stated that he did not have the capacity to interfere or issue orders on internal security, an area for which the Military Committee was responsible. Paragraph 875. Regarding military matters, the central body of the RAK was the General Staff, led by Son Sen, with Pol Pot having general responsibility for the military. Nevertheless, as Deputy Secretary of the Central Committee and member of the Military Committee of the Central Committee, Nuon Chea actively participated in military affairs together with Pol Pot and Son Sen. During an interview, Deutsch states, quote, everything had to pass through Nuon Chea, even if it was in scope of the military, end quote. It appears that Nuon Chea participated in the military planning of the attack on Phnom Penh in April 1975. Furthermore, numerous witnesses confirm that Nuon Chea exercised some responsibility for military matters during the Democratic Cambodia regime, including the political training of the RAK members and the appointment of military cadres. Finally, a telephone operator for Son Sen explains that there was no telegram communication between Son Sen and Nuon Chea, quote, because they generally met and worked together every day, end quote. Conversely, he states Nuon Chea never came to the General Staff, where Son Sen regularly met with the divisions. This is corroborated by the fact that none of the minutes of meetings between the General Staff, Central Divisions, and independent regiments mention Nuon Chia's attendance.
Paragraph 876. Although foreign policy was not Nuon Chia's primary responsibility, he did exercise some functions with regards to international security matters. As a full rights member of the CPK Standing Committee, Nuon Chia participated in the decision-making process regarding policies and strategies related to Cambodian borders and the situation with Vietnam. He provided opinions and precise instructions on these matters. Nuon Chia negotiated with the Vietnamese authorities and participated in the drafting of the Black Paper concerning the foreign policy of Vietnam. Nuon Chia was copied through the vast majority of surviving telegrams concerning the situation on the battlefields and at the border with Vietnam, and movement of troops. Military attacks and casualties were frequently discussed. Some other telegrams asked for instructions or materials from the CPK Center, or acknowledge having followed an instruction, or received materials. There is also evidence that Nuon Chia had the authority to send instructions to lower echelons on matters of international security, and that he did so by telegrams or by letter on some occasions. S21 Security Center and S24 Worksite, Prey Saw. Paragraph 877. In interviews conducted after the CPK regime, Nuon Chia explains that he did not know about S21 before 1979, and that any documents implicating him must have been fabricated. He adds that Dutch was working for the Ministry of Defense and Internal Security, and that Son Sen was the one accountable for that ministry. Nevertheless, there is strong evidence that Nuon Chia was in charge of the S21 Security Center and its associated worksite S24, Priso, from the time of their establishment until 6 January 1979. Paragraph 878. At S21 between 15 August 1975 and 15 August 1977, first in Loan Ellis Nat and then subsequently Dutch had Son Sen as direct superior. Dutch understood that Son Sen's authority was derived from his position as member of the CPK Center Military Committee, member of the CPK Standing Committee, and as chairman of the General Staff. Even if Dutch did not have direct contact with Nuon Chia during this period, he understood from his conversations with Son Sen that Nuon Chia, as the deputy secretary and the second in the party hierarchy, was in overall charge of S21 as Son Sen's supervisor. Dutch states, quote, Son Sen had Nuon Chea as his superior, the latter being under Pol Pot's authority, end of quote. It is not always clear to what extent Dutch knowledge and understanding of the hierarchical structure above him developed with his access to the case file. But it is clear that at the relevant time, Dutch was aware that Nuon Chea was Son Sen's superior with respect to S21. Paragraph 879. On 15 August 1977, when Son Sen left Phnom Penh to be closer to the front lines in the conflict with Vietnam, and Nuon Chea summoned Dutch to his office at the Buddhist Institute. From this point on, Dutch understood he had to report to Nuon Chea, who became his direct supervisor. Dutch states that Nuon Chea told him, quote, the chairman at S21 was not me, Dutch, but he, Nuon Chea, was the chairman, end of quote. Although reporting directly to Nuon Chea, Dutch maintained communication with Son Sen, who would contact him once or twice a month by phone. Although Dutch no longer sent confessions to Son Sen directly, Son Sen still participated in monitoring S21 activities and, according to Dutch, considered himself to be Dutch's supervisor. Association with other CPK leaders. Paragraph 893. Nuon Chea had personal and political associations with other key members of the CPK for many years. In addition to his two offices at Borekila and Vichayalai Phra Suramarat, that is the Buddhist Institute, Nuon Chea lived and worked daily with Pol Pot, Khieu Samphan, Ieng Sari, and Son Sen at K1 and K3 for almost the entire duration of the CPK regime. Paragraph 894. Additionally, Nuon Chea visited a warehouse with Khieu Samphan and wandered, and he went to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs with Pol Pot and Khieu Samphan. Nuon Chea also went to the grassroots with other members of the party, including Pol Pot, Khieu Samphan, and Ieng Sari. He took part in major party gatherings together with other CPK leaders, including Pol Pot, Ieng Sari, Khieu Samphan, and Ieng Thiret. Nuon Chea received foreign delegations in Phnom Penh together with other CPK leaders, including Son Sen, Khieu Samphan, Ieng Sari, and Pol Pot. Finally, Nuon Chea regularly made statements to foreign governments from Phnom Penh with other CPK leaders. Participation in the common purpose, movement of the population. Paragraph 895. Through his various roles in the CPK, Nuon Chea participated in a movement of the population from towns and cities to rural areas, as well as from one rural area to another. Paragraph 896. The CPK moved the population from a number of cities prior to 17 April 1975, while Nuon Chea was on the standing committee. According to Khieu Sampon, in 1960, during the first party congress, at which Nuon Chea was present, a determination was made that the cities were likely places for enemies of the party to assemble. In a speech in July 1978, Nuon Chea confirmed this position, stating that before 1975, there were few enemies in rural areas, but many in the cities. Further, during the speech he gave at the 9th anniversary of the RAK on 16 January 1977, Nuon Chea mentioned the evacuation of Banam in the East Zone in 1973 and Udong in the Special Zone in 1974. Paragraph 897. On several occasions during and after the regime, Nuon Chea endorsed and defended this policy. He explained that immediately after liberation, the cities were evacuated for security reasons in order to smash the plan that involved joint action on the part of the USA, the KGB, and Vietnam to seize power from the CPK. After the regime, he added that the evacuation was necessary to protect the people from war, and that it was a temporary measure because of the lack of food and fuel in the cities. Talking about the people who were moved, he states, quote, "Not many people died. Later on, yes. But during the evacuation, they were still physically strong." End of quote. Nuon Chea was also made aware of the CPK-era movements of the population through the receipt of telegrams, such as one dated 11 December 1977, which mentions the distribution of new people from Siem Reap to other districts. Phase 1, paragraph 898. Nuon Chea participated in the decision-making process that led to the movement of people from the cities, in particular Phnom Penh, to the countryside. Starting from 17 April 1975. In an interview after the regime, he stated that this decision was made by, quote, "the party center," end of quote. He nevertheless also stated that the analysis that led to the decision to evacuate the cities was taken by the CPK Military Committee, a committee he denies membership of. Paragraph 899. Nuon Chea was involved in the continued planning of this policy through his participation in meetings in late March and early April 1975. In early April, a meeting took place at Pol Pot's office in Tang Pon village, Kampong Trolaj Le district in Kampong Chnang province. The purpose of this meeting was to discuss the evacuation of Phnom Penh and the implementation of this policy. Nuon Chea participated in the meeting, took his own notes, and, according to a witness, quote, Mr. Nuon Chea also provided his impressions and agreed to the plan, end of quote. Paragraph 900. In April 1975, Nuon Chea and Son Sen held a meeting with military commanders from all zones in which they planned and coordinated the attack on Phnom Penh. In an interview after the regime Nuon Chea stated, quote, we attacked and we took military bases inside. So, by 17 April 1975, liberation, the army went in and completely liberated Phnom Penh, end of quote. Together with other CPK leaders, Nuon Chea left the former CPK headquarters on 17 April 1975 and entered Phnom Penh on or around 20 April 1975. This is consistent with the first recorded CPK's leaders meeting held in Phnom Penh, which took place, quote, less than a week after the liberation, end of quote, at the train station, and where Nuon Chea is recorded as present. Phase 2, paragraph 901. The decision to move people from the central, Old North, Southwest, West, and East zones to the North and the Northwest zones were made by the members of the Standing Committee after they visited the Northwest zone between 20 and 24 August 1975. It is likely that Nuon Chea was part of this trip and participated in the subsequent Standing Committee meeting. At a minimum, he was also aware of a party document dated September 1975 that specified the need to relocate new people to the North and Northwest zones. This document coincided with an enlarged Standing Committee meeting in September 1975 to discuss strengthening agriculture and industry, and which Nuon Chea attended. Telegram 15, dated November 1975, concerning problems arising in the implementation of the decision to transfer Cham and other people out of the East to the North zone en masse, was sent by Chun to Pol Pot and copied to Nuon Chea. A witness in charge of telegrams for Center Office K1 states that the chairman of the telegram unit made the decision to copy this telegram to Nuon Chea, quote, because this telegram is related to the people, it had to be sent to Nuon Chea in order to find a solution, end of quote. Association with other CPK senior leaders. Paragraph 1016. Ieng Sary has had close personal and political associations with the other key members of the CPK for many years. During the CPK regime, he lived and worked with Son Sen, Khieu Samphan, Nuon Chea, and Pol Pot at K1 and K3. Paragraph 1017. Ieng Sary associated with the senior leaders of the regime in many different capacities, including at major party gatherings with Pol Pot, Ieng Thieret, Khieu Samphan, and Nuon Chea, when preparing to travel to the zones, when assisting them to write speeches, or when receiving them at B1. Ieng Sary and Khieu Samphan received foreign delegations together and jointly traveled overseas. Ieng Sary and Khieu Samphan also traveled to the countryside and inspected cooperatives and work sites together. Participation in the common purpose movement of the population. Paragraph 1018. Through his various roles in the CPK, Ieng Sary participated in the movement of the population from towns and cities to rural areas, as well as from one rural area to another. Paragraph 1019. The CPK moved the population from a number of cities prior to 17 April 1975, while Ieng Sary was on the standing committee, a fact that he admits discussing with Pol Pot near Phnom Penh in 1974. These discussions may have happened as part of the June 1974 Central Committee Conference. Paragraph 1020. Both during and after the CPK regime, Ieng Sary publicly endorsed and defended the CPK's policy of emptying cities and transferring their inhabitants to the countryside. In July 1978, Ieng Sary gave 3 reasons for the emptying of Cambodian cities. Quote, the food shortage, the presence of enemy networks, and the people's farming experience, end of quote. In the same month, he explained that once industry had been developed, people would be able to return to the cities. When he made foreign delegations, Ieng Sary said that the population movements had been planned in advance and were necessary due to the likelihood of bombings, the presence of spies, the threat of famine, and the need to send people to the countryside for agricultural production. He also endorsed this policy at meetings of his staff at B1, saying that it had been done to purge the people of their town habits. Ieng Sary was made aware of CPK-era forced transfers through the receipt of telegrams. For example, one dated 11 December 1977 mentions the distribution of new people from Siem Reap to other districts. Paragraph 1021. After 6 January 1979, Ieng Sary continued to endorse and defend the decision to empty various cities and towns. For example, in 1980, he claimed that the decision to empty the cities had been taken because the PPK was afraid that Vietnam would infiltrate and kill CPK leaders. In the same year, he claimed that when he arrived in Phnom Penh, the city was already empty, and that if there had been more people in the CPK who thought like him, the decision would not have been taken. In 1996, the Democratic National Union movement, created by Ieng Sary, stated in a communique that the movement of people had been considered necessary to teach city people how to endure moral and physical suffering through hard labor. Phase 1, paragraph 1022. Ieng Sary participated in a movement of the general population of Phnom Penh. While he was not in Phnom Penh when the meetings that finalized the plan to evacuate the city took place, he returned to Phnom Penh from Beijing between 22 and 23 April 1975, by which time he says the city was empty. Ieng Sary admits that he discussed the plan to move the population with Pol Pot in 1974 and advised him that the Chinese were interested to know what the CPK planned to do in the event of a CPK victory. Pol Pot replied that the plan was to evacuate and that the Chinese need not worry as they already had experience in Stung Trai and Krati. At this stage, Ieng Sary says that it was not clear if Phnom Penh would be totally emptied or not. He says the plan was to evacuate and then, quote, we, end of quote, would wait and see how Cambodians and USA would react. In September 1996, Ieng Sary further admitted that in 1974 he warned Pol Pot that moving the population of Phnom Penh would not be as easy as it had been to evacuate the smaller towns of Stung Trai and Krati. He cautioned that everything would have to be, quote, thoroughly arranged because there were millions of people, end of quote. He says that by the time he arrived in the city, everything was already decided and it was not worth talking about. Paragraph 1023. Over the years, Ieng Sary gave various reasons for moving the population out of Phnom Penh. In September 1975, he claimed that there were two reasons for the movement. First, since there was a food shortage and the CPK did not have sufficient transport to deliver food to Phnom Penh, they decided to move people to the country where there was food. This also avoided having to ask other countries for assistance. Second, they had discovered a document detailing a secret plan by the CIA and the defeated Tribunal regime to undermine and resist the CPK victory in Phnom Penh. He also said that the people were free to return to Phnom Penh from the countryside if they wished, and that 100,000 had done so already. In October 1975, Ieng Sary claimed that the evacuation of Phnom Penh had been necessary to thwart an American plan to destabilize the CPK government. In May 1977, Ieng Sary said that after the, quote, initial evacuation, the cities were being populated again, end of quote, and that the unpopulated areas were being used for production. He also admitted that 2,000 to 3,000 people died during the evacuation of Phnom Penh. On 15 January 1978, Ieng Sary gave a detailed explanation to the Danish ambassador regarding the emptying of Phnom Penh. He said that it had been carried out due to the shortage of food, the security situation, and the need to increase agricultural production.
Phase 2, paragraph 1024. The decision to move people from the central, Old North, Southwest, West, and East zones to the North and Northwest zones were made by the Standing Committee after it visited the Northwest zone between the 20th and the 24th of August 1975. While Ieng Sary may have been out of the country at this time, he has stated that he attended an enlarged Standing Committee meeting in September 1975 to discuss implementing a dictatorship and strengthening agriculture and industry. A party document coinciding with the date of this meeting specified the need to relocate new people to the north and the northwest zones. Other roles. Military, paragraph 1146. Both before and after 17 April 1975, Khieu Samphan was referred to as the Deputy Prime Minister, Minister of National Defense, and Commander-in-Chief of the CPNLAF. Deutsch has suggested that Khieu Samphan was merely the nominal head of the committee for the army, a, quote, picture to show the world, end quote, whereas Pol Pot had the actual control of the army. Association with other CPK senior leaders, paragraph 1151. Khieu Samphan has had close personal and political associations with the other key members of the CPK for many years. During the CPK regime, he regularly associated with other senior leaders of the CPK. He lived and worked with Son Sen, Ieng Sary, Nuon Chea, Pol Pot, and Von Wait until Von Wait was arrested and sent to S21 at K1 and K3 for the majority of the regime. Witnesses regularly saw Khieu Samphan associating, meeting with, and working with other senior leaders, and heard announcements on the radio about their work together. Deutsch gave evidence that Khieu Samphan, quote, had Pol Pot's trust, end quote, and was given, quote, privileged information, end quote. Paragraph 1152. Khieu Samphan chaired, presided over, and presented at major party gatherings and study sessions with Pol Pot, Nuon Chea, Ieng Sary, and Ieng Thierit. Khieu Samphan and Ieng Sary received foreign delegations together and traveled overseas together. Khieu Samphan and Ieng Sary also traveled to the countryside and inspected cooperatives and work sites together. Ieng Sary regularly communicated with Khieu Samphan when preparing for visitors and before traveling to the zones. Participation in the common purpose, movement of the population. Paragraph 1153. Through his various roles in the CPK, Khieu Samphan participated in the movement of the population from towns and cities to rural areas, as well as from one rural area to another. Phase 1, paragraph 1154, redacted, states that Khieu Samphan attended a meeting to decide on the movement of the population of Phnom Penh in early April 1975. The meeting was at Office B5, the office of Pol Pot, at Tang Pon village, Kampong Tralait Le district, sub-district and district, Kampong Chnang province. Redacted stated that Khieu Samphan took notes and, quote, gave his opinions and impressions and agreed to the plan to evacuate the people, end quote. Paragraph 1155. Another witness gave evidence that Khieu Samphan entered Phnom Penh on or around the 20th of April 1975. On 17 April 1975, this witness traveled to Phnom Atras to rest and to prepare to enter Phnom Penh with a group of CPK cadres. She stated that Khieu Samphan, Hu Nam, and Son Sen traveled to meet each other at Phnom Atras and were, quote, getting ready to enter and occupy, end quote, Phnom Penh. She stated that Khieu Samphan, Hu Nam, and Son Sen stayed at Phnom Atras for 3 nights before traveling to Phnom Penh. Paragraph 1156. Khieu Samphan stated that he entered Phnom Penh from the 7th to the 10th days after, 7 to 10 days after the 17th of April 1975. He stated that he was not aware of the plan to move the population from Phnom Penh until he entered Phnom Penh and overheard a group of soldiers talking about it. He has publicly stated that he does not think that the population of Phnom Penh should have been moved. Paragraph 1157. Khieu Samphan issued a number of statements over the radio in the months leading up to the movement of the population relating to the situation in Phnom Penh. Between January and April 1975, Khieu Samphan repeatedly broadcast details of what was happening in Phnom Penh, claimed that the, quote, traitorous Lon Nol clique, end quote, was on the brink of collapse, and ordered and appealed to the population of Phnom Penh to fight them in order to liberate the nation. He also called for all foreign embassies and foreign organizations in Phnom Penh to evacuate their personnel in order to avoid suffering casualties. Pursuant to CPK policy, he urged the population of Phnom Penh to relocate to the countryside, calling on it to, quote, cross over to our liberated zone, end quote, declaring there was no rise in Phnom Penh, and promising them that cadres and combatants in CPK-controlled territory were standing by to assist them with their new lives in rural areas, and in particular would be provided with, quote, with adequate supplies and adequate means of production, end quote, for agricultural production. Paragraph 1158. He also called on the party cadres and its combatants to sweep the enemy pacification activities from the entire liberated zone, and generally further uphold their revolutionary vigilance against enemy schemes. On the 26th of February 1975, Khieu Samphan released a communique on behalf of the FUNC stating that the 7 traitors in Phnom Penh, Lon Nol, Sirimatak, Sung Ngọc Thánh, Cheng Hến, Ân Tam, Long Boret, and Suoc Thien Fernandez should be killed, and calling for the people of Phnom Penh to contribute to the nation's liberation by turning your gun against them. He noted that the, quote, traitorous Phnom Penh clique is now on the verge of total collapse, end quote, and ordered the people to, quote, attack the enemy more vigorously and incessantly, both at the forefront and in the rear, in order to fulfill the duty of completely and permanently liberating our nation and people, end quote. On the 13th of April 1975, he declared in a broadcast speech that although Lon Nol and other, quote, super traitors, end quote, had fled the country, other traitors in addition to the 7 he had named in February was attempting, quote, to continue the treachery of the last bunch of traitors, end quote, and called for their overthrow. Paragraph 1159. On the 13th of August 1975, Khieu Samphan explained on the radio that, quote, immediately after the liberation, end quote, the FUNC was confronted with the question of how to solve the problems of having a starving population in Phnom Penh, and that they solved this problem by mobilizing the people to increase production throughout the country. He repeated this assertion during his 18 August 1976 speech at the 5th Non-Aligned Summit Conference in Colombo, stating that, quote, we have fundamentally solved the problems of livelihood for our Cambodian people since liberation, notably with regard to food, end quote. Khieu Samphan has subsequently given a number of statements endorsing and defending the movement of the population of Phnom Penh on the basis that the population was starving. Paragraph 1160, redacted, has stated that Khieu Samphan told him by letter not to return to Phnom Penh in April 1975, as the CPK needed to evacuate the city as a precaution due to the development of a deadly contagion. Khieu Samphan stated in an interview with the co-investigating judges that he does not remember exactly, but that it is possible this letter may have been dictated by Pol Pot. Paragraph 1161. A newspaper article dated the 28th of April 1975 asserts that Khieu Samphan had entered Phnom Penh the week before, dressed in a simple black pyjama suit and a chroma, and, quote, proclaiming the triumphs of his new leftist regime, end quote. Additionally, a New York Times report dated 9 July 1982 details an interview with Khieu Samphan in Kuala Lumpur in which he purportedly admitted to participating in the collective decision to forcibly transfer the population of Phnom Penh. Phase 2, paragraph 1162. The decision to move people from the central, Old North, Southwest, West, and East zones were made by the Standing Committee after they visited the Northwest zone between the 20th and 24th of August 1975. While there is no record of who participated in this visit, even if Khieu Samphan was not part of this mission, Ieng Sary has stated that Khieu Samphan attended an enlarged Standing Committee meeting in September 1975 to discuss implementing the dictatorship and strengthening agriculture and industry. A party document coinciding with the date of the meeting specified the need to relocate new people to the north and northwest zones. Part 4. Character information. 1. Nuon Chea. Paragraph 1580. Nuon Chea's political activities until 1979 are set out in the section of the closing order regarding the role of the accused person. Paragraph 1581. When the Vietnamese arrived in January 1979, Nuon Chea and Pol Pot met Ieng Sary and Khieu Samphan in Posat province. In the Central Committee meeting of February and March 1979, Nuon Chea urged Pol Pot to remain party secretary. He toured Cambodia and distributed supplies to cadres and combatants. In December 1979, the Standing Committee of the People's Representative Assembly unanimously decided to maintain Nuon Chea as its chairman. He hosted a conference on the 15th of February 1981 with Khieu Samphan, where it was decided to form a united front against the Vietnamese with the Khmer People's National Liberation Front and the Royalists. Nuon Chea and Khieu Samphan also distributed circulars on behalf of the DK Representative Assembly urging military, civilians, and compatriots to remain patriotic in their struggle against the Vietnamese. In October 1981, Nguyen Chia was the head of the DK delegation to the Asian Parliamentarian Conference in Beijing. After the official dissolution of the CPK in late 1983 or early 1984, Nguyen Chia held a political education session in Sam Lot, where he declared that, quote, communism was only a means towards patriotism, end quote. Paragraph 1582. Nguyen Chia surrendered to the Phnom Penh government together with Khieu Samphan in December 1998, about 6 months after Pol Pot's death. At the time of his arrest on the 19th of September 2007, Nguyen Chia was living with his wife in Sa Prum village, Pailan district. Paragraph 1583. After declaring at his initial appearance and the adversarial hearing prior to his detention that he denied all charges and that he wanted to, quote, enlighten the world about the truth, end quote, Nguyen Chia made no substantive statements arguing that he was in poor health. He also elected to exercise his right to remain silent. Paragraph 1584. Nguyen Chia refused to meet with the psychiatric experts who were supposed to examine him and offer an opinion on his fitness to stand trial. The experts, therefore, only observed that a review of his medical files revealed no past history of mental disorder. Two, Ieng Sari, alias 1, paragraph 1589. Ieng Sari's political activities between 1975 and 1979 are set out in the section of the closing order regarding the role of the charged person. Paragraph 1590. When the Vietnamese army entered Cambodia at the beginning of 1979, Ieng Sari escaped towards Thailand and joined Pol Pot and Nguyen Chia near Posat. It was then decided that he should travel to China in order to negotiate assistance. Paragraph 1591. On the 19th of August 1979, Ieng Sari was found guilty in absentia of genocide together with Pol Pot by the Phnom Penh Popular Revolutionary Court and was sentenced to death and confiscation of his property. Paragraph 1592. Ieng Sari continued to exercise official functions in the exiled DK government, representing the government abroad, in particular before the United Nations, and was identified as a leading member of the Khmer Rouge by foreign media. In 1982, Ieng Sari participated to the creation of the coalition government of the DK, which was composed of members of the Khmer Rouge as well as partitions of Norodom Sihanouk and Son Sen. Khieu Samphan took over Ieng Sari's position as Minister of Foreign Affairs. In his role as leaders of the coalition government of the Democratic Kampuchea Economic and Financial Committee, Ieng Sari was the exclusive interlocutor with the Chinese authorities regarding military and financial assistance provided by Beijing to the Khmer Rouge. Paragraph 1594. Ieng Sary was progressively marginalized within the movement and was relieved of some of his responsibilities. In August 1996, he left the movement and joined the government. Thousands of petitions joined as well. On the 14th of September 1996, a royal decree pardoned him for his 1979 conviction, and he received an amnesty from prosecution under the law of 1994 to outlaw the Democratic Cambodia group. Paragraph 1595. In 1997, Ieng Sary announced the creation of the Democratic National United Movement, which he considered presenting at the 1998 election, but renounced. Paragraph 1596. Until his arrest, Ieng Sary lived in Phnom Penh and Thailand with his wife. Paragraph 1597. In the context of a psychiatric assessment ordered by the co-investigating judges, the psychiatrist concluded as follows, quote, Ieng Sary presents as an 85-year-old man whose cognitive functioning appears consistent with his age, and his longer-term memory appears to be significantly intact. He does not demonstrate any signs of current mental disorder, although it does appear clear that he has suffered a degree of psychological trauma through his life experience over many years. Nevertheless, he does not appear to meet diagnostic criteria for any mental disorder and is, in our view, in robust mental health for a man of his age. We have identified mild cognitive impairment, especially in the area of recent memory, which we believe to be consistent with the accused age. On examination, we do not believe that this will impair Ieng Sary to the point where he would not be fit to stand trial. End quote. 3. Khieu Samphan. Paragraph 1601. Khieu Samphan's political activities between 1975 and 1979 are set out in the section of the closing order regarding the role of the charged person. Paragraph 1602. Following the fall of the CPK regime in 1979, the flight of CPK leaders and the advance of Vietnamese troops, Khieu Samphan continued to support the activities of the CPK. Khieu Samphan remained in Cambodia with Pol Pot and assisted in directing the conflict with the Vietnamese. His involvement included visiting and distributing supplies to troops, and representing Democratic Cambodia as the President of the State Presidium. As President and Prime Minister of Democratic Cambodia and Provisional President of the Patriotic and Democratic Front, Khieu Samphan instigated efforts to establish a coalition between other resistant groups, namely the Khmer People's National Liberation Front and the Royalists. With the formation of the coalition government of the Democratic Cambodia in 1982, Khieu Samphan became Vice President in charge of Foreign Affairs of Democratic Cambodia. Between 1979 and 1986, he conducted diplomatic missions and represented Cambodia at the United Nations, representing Khmer Rouge interest. In August 1985, when it was decided to create the Party of Democratic Cambodia, Khieu Samphan was named as president. In 1989, he attended the Paris International Conference representing Democratic Cambodia, and in 1991, he was present along with Son Sen at the signing of the Paris Peace Agreements. As such, he carried out an official visit to Phnom Penh in 1991, during which he was attacked by a group of demonstrators. He maintained political alliances with Pol Pot until his arrest in 1997 by the Khmer Rouge. Although generally denying any association with the crimes committed under the regime of Democratic Cambodia, Khieu Samphan admitted that the CPK, quote, made some mistakes, end quote, in April 1986. Paragraph 1603. Khieu Samphan lived along the Thai-Cambodian border until his inclusion in the Cambodian government together with Nguyen Chia in December 1998. At the time of his arrest, he was living in Pailan. Paragraph 1604. Khieu Samphan refused to meet the psychiatric experts in charge of examining him to issue an opinion on his fitness to stand trial. Instead, he informed them that he was not suffering from any psychiatric problems and that he refused to undergo any examination. The experts were therefore only able to note that his medical records did not show any history of mental disorder. That is all, Mr. President. Thank you. The President. The time is now appropriate for lunch adjournment. The Chamber will adjourn from now until 1:30, and this afternoon the Chamber will hear the testimony of one witness, TCW 248, and due to certain objection by certain party in relation to the hearing of the testimony TCW 428, the Chamber would like to issue the ruling as follows. The trial chamber is seized of a request from the co-prosecutors to place on the case file an interview of TCW 428 from the 11th of December 2010 as a new document. Pursuant to Internal Rule 87.4, the Chamber may admit new evidence deemed conducive to ascertaining the truth, where that evidence also satisfies the prima facie standards of relevance, reliability, and authenticity required under Rule 87.3. In accordance with Internal Rule 87.4 and reflecting jurisprudence at the international level, the Chamber has also generally required the requesting party to satisfy the Chamber that the proposed evidence was unavailable before the opening of the trial and or could not have been discovered with the exercise of due diligence. Document E190. Although this document was created after the opening of trial, it was available when the trial chamber notified the parties on the 25th of October 2011 that witness TCW 428 may be called to testify during the first trial segments of Case 002, Document E131/1.1. Therefore, the OCP request comes almost 1 year after being notified that this witness may testify and on the eve of his testimony. Furthermore, the document was only available in Khmer until the 28th of September 2012, the Friday before the witness was scheduled to testify, providing little notice to the parties and trial chamber to gather the substance of the 40-page document. For these reasons, the trial chamber does not consider the co-prosecutor's request to be timely pursuant to Internal Rule 87.4. I note the International Defense Counsel for Mr. Nguyen Chi is on his feet. You may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, everyone. I have two brief applications this morning. The first relates to what's just happened, the reading out of those segments of the closing order. Our client, Mr. Nguyen Chi, would very much like to publicly comment on those passages. He would like to do that in open court. Unfortunately, I've also been informed that he's suffering from a headache, a backache, and a general lack of concentration. I would propose the following, that we perhaps take an extra 15 minutes during the lunch break so that he could rest. He could come back after the lunch break, and I'm informed that his comments would take approximately 5 to 10 minutes. He could make those submissions, and then he could retire to the holding cell for the rest of the afternoon. If that's acceptable to everyone, that's our application for this morning.
The President, responding to the application made by Mr. Nguyen Jia through his defense lawyer, the first of which is the application to respond to the various paragraphs read by the greffiers alleging the accused. And according to the defense counsel, he may need 15 minutes or so to make such a statement. The chamber will take that into consideration and issue a ruling afterwards. And this afternoon, the chamber will hear the witness TCW 428. And the chamber also notes the request by Mr. Nguyen Jia through his defense lawyer to follow the proceeding remotely from the holding cell due to his health reason. The chamber grants this request. Mr. Nguyen Jia may follow the proceeding from the holding cell where the audio-visual equipment is connected for him to follow the proceeding for the remainder of the days. The chamber notes that Mr. Nguyen Jia has waived his right not to be present directly in this courtroom. The chamber requires the defense team for Mr. Nguyen Jia to submit immediately the waiver with the thumbprint and signature of Mr. Nguyen Jia, and AV assistants are instructed to connect the audio-visual equipment to the holding cell downstairs, where Mr. Nguyen Jia will observe the proceeding from the holding cell for the remainder of today's proceeding. Security guards are instructed to bring the co-accused to the holding cell downstairs. Mr. Nguyen Jia shall remain in the holding cell for the rest of the day, where he will follow the proceeding remotely through audio-visual means, and Mr. Khieu Sampon is to be brought to this courtroom before 1:30. Is there any other matters, counsel? Proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. As a matter of fact, there is one more thing I would like to raise. It has nothing to do with this issue. It has to do with the next witness who's being called. Given the hour, I think it's appropriate that I make that application after lunch. However, I also think it's essential that the application be made outside of the hearing of the witness, so I would appreciate it if the witness were not immediately brought in. I think I'll need about 5 minutes to make my application this afternoon. Thank you.
The President. Counsel, can you summarize your position and application? Because we have so far made it clear that you should make your application as clear as possible so that we can arrange the time allotted to you for any particular purpose.
Your Honor, I'd be more than happy to make the application now. As I said, it shouldn't take more than 5 minutes. I do note it's 20 past 12, and I assume people are hungry, but I'm happy to make it now.
You may proceed, but you have to be precise on the substantial issue you want to raise, and you have to mention the subject matter of your application before you make any detailed application. So you have to summarize the substance, the subject matter of your application. Then that will forms the basis for the chamber to decide as to how much time we may allot to you to make such an application.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's a very brief, what we would call in my jurisdiction a motion in limine, L-I-M-I-N-E, and that is typically an oral application made prior to the testimony of a witness to exclude certain segments of the testimony. It's a well-established procedure. It relates in particular to a witness statement, and I think this is probably the best opportunity to do it now while the witness is not here. I'm referring to a document E3/80, and that is one of the OCIJ witness statements, one of the statements taken by the OCIJ investigators of Mr. Mias Vun, TCW 428. And my concern relates to a small portion of this document. And just for the record, let me read out those ERNs very quickly. This won't take long. It's the 5th page of the English version. That's ERN 400491657. And that's Khmer ERN 00486472. And the French ERN 00509-787 through 788. And I think if I just read out one line, it will become obvious. The thrust of my application will become obvious. So let me just read. And this is a question by one of the investigators, and I'm not naming any names, and I do not intend to cast any aspersions. I'm simply reading from the statement. The confession of Chuchet, alias C, stated that, quote, and then a substantive portion of that statement, that confession, that torture-tainted material, was put to the witness by an agent of the OCIJ. So I think it should be clear what I'm complaining about. Here we have a judicial body relying on the substance of torture-tainted evidence. Now, again, I assume that problem is immediately apparent. However, just let me make it very clear for the record, and this perhaps, despite the categorical prohibition of the CAT, the Convention Against Torture, again, we have a judicial officer relying on the substance. Now, I don't think I need to remind the bench, and I probably should just mention very briefly for the public, that kind of exercise, that kind of reliance on torture-tainted evidence for its substance is categorically, absolutely prohibited, and this chamber has concurred with that position on several occasions. So it appears on the face of this document that a member of the OCIJ has deviated from that accepted position. Again, this perhaps for the benefit of Judge Laverne especially, but for the others, I'm not making a complaint about a procedural defect. The CAT, the Convention Against Torture, as we're all aware, does not concern itself with procedural defects. It concerns itself with substance. And this, in my submission, in our submission, is a substantive problem. Yet another substantive problem with the manner in which the judicial investigation was handled. So, just turning to my application then, to be clear, not a motion for annulment. It is, in fact, as I said earlier, a motion in limine. And again, for the interpreters, that's L-I-M-I-N-E. It's a motion to exclude portions of this statement that relate to the substance of a confession. So I hope as a starting point we can all agree that that is, in fact, a problem. Now, what to do about it, the solution, in our submission, the passage, that passage that I've read at the beginning of page 5, and the several subsequent questions that follow from that passage that relate to that substance should be stricken from this court. It should be not discussed in court by the judges, by any parties. The prosecution is free to ask questions on topics. However, it is our submission that this material, this portion, and I would say that goes from question and answer 16 on that page through question and answer 20, that should be excluded. And I would hope, I assume, I expect that the rationale is obvious. This is, again, referring to my own jurisdiction, this is what we would call the fruit of the poisonous tree. That is, we have an illegal act, a legal violation, the use of illegal material. So that in itself is the poisonous tree. The fruit, let me slow down, the fruit being the material that comes as a result of that. So it all needs to be
The President, how much time do you need to make this oral application? Because all we wanted to know was the subject matter of your application, and your time is up for this application, because I am not expecting that you are making an oral application for that. So please advise the chamber as to how much time do you need. We need to understand your subject matter of application first.
Well, that was, in a nutshell, my application. And I'll just say, to use another, perhaps a musical analogy, Duke Ellington has famously said there are two kinds of music, good and bad. I think there are two kinds of evidence, and this is clearly bad evidence, and it should not be used before this chamber. And that is my application in limine.
The President, thank you. The chamber notes your application. Even though you argue that it is not meant to challenge the procedural defect of the investigation, and we note this application, and so far we have also encountered this similar application as well, and you of course have the right to challenge the procedure in relation to such investigation, but the court is adjourned.
This is an oral application that I've made. I think, in fairness, we need to hear from my colleagues on this side of the stage, from the prosecution, and that you need to make an oral ruling. Now, I see you're all getting up and walking out of here, but you're judges, and you need to be able to deal with this matter when it comes up in court. Walking away doesn't solve the problem.